Hello again and welcome to Fireside Chats with Veterans. My name is Don Randolph and I am here with Cyrus Beatty Gilmore, or Cy Gilmore. Mr. Gilmore is a veteran of the U.S. Navy and was in the Navy during the Korean War. And thank you, Mr. Gilmore, for coming today and
my pleasure,
for sharing with us your story. I'd like to start just actually before the beginning in what was life like for you prior to joining the service, and what were the circumstances that got you to be in the service?
Let's start with my childhood. I was born 1929 in Davenport, Oklahoma, to a Cherokee father and an English-German mother, and her name was Carolyn Elizabeth Johnson Gilmore, and my grandmother, Rachel Cherokee Hickey Gilmore, she was a popular person in Cherokee country, and my dad was the last of her children that's on the Dawes census. Uncle Herb was born in 1909, so he uses the same number that my dad used, my grandmother's number, and Uncle Herb, when he died, he lived in Hawaii, and he had two children, which were Cherokee too, and they were pretty fine children. One of them still lives out there.
And you actually have a medal as a Cherokee Patriot.
Right.
Can you tell us?
Patriotism Award.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you drafted into the Navy, or did you join?
No, I went to Fresno, California, and they were about to draft me in the military, and then they give you whatever service they want you to go. You don't have any choice.
Mm-hmm.
I come home and I told my dad. He says, well, you better just do something else. He said, you better go join the Navy or the Air Force. Well, I should have picked the Air Force, but I made a mistake and joined the Navy, which was all right, but it's not anything special. And I went to boot camp in San Diego, California.
Okay.
And after boot camp, they assigned each of us to a ship.
Mm-hmm.
And they assigned me to the USS Hollister.
Okay.
DD 788. And after that, I went out to the ship, and I stood on the quarterdeck all day. I didn't have any idea. I was young and inexperienced. And the chief petty officer on the quarterdeck, he said, you better get back over about 3 blocks from where you graduated from boot camp, because you got to go to fire control radar school. So he gave me they call it a chit, to get on a water taxi.
Mm-hmm.
And they took me back over, and that's where I went to school.
Okay.
And when I graduated from school, I was 3rd class fire control radarman, and that was really a pretty good rate. But then I only made $128 a month, which wasn't much. But after that, the only time I got off of that ship was when I'd go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And that picture that you show is the one they took of me at Treasure Island, San Francisco. And most of the time when I'd go to school, that's where they'd send us.
Okay.
And not just me, but they'd send several off the ship, especially gunner's mates. We went up there, they came out in 1949, they came out with a new powder, and they called it Copex. It looked like little pieces of dog food, and this chief petty officer had a stainless steel bowl, and he put a piece of that in it, and he had a little thing like you light firecrackers with, and
mm-hmm.
he stuck that thing on that, and it just went it went off real quick, I'm telling you. Nothing left, no powder, no nothing, and that's what they put on those guns now.
Okay.
And it was really something to see, that doggone thing. Anyway, I got my brother Don. He was named after my father, and he got his wings in 1939. And he was on the USS Lexington. That's was one of the first aircraft carriers. There was 3 of them that President Roosevelt passed by 1 vote in Congress to build. And if they hadn't done that, we'd have been in a lot of trouble, I think, yeah, in the Pacific, because the Japanese had their eyes on taking those islands out in the Pacific. Anyway, when he come back to land on the Lexington, it was sunk. There was no place to land, so we landed in the water. And he told me that when he hit that water, it was just like a brick wall. And he hurt his sternum inside his. Well, he was in rehab in Texas for about 18 months. And when he got out of there, he went to training pilots because he couldn't do any more actual flying, for, you know, in the war zones.
But when did you go out on a mission with the Hollister for the first time?
I went out the first time, let's see, it was about, well, we went to, they didn't have any charts. The Navy or none of the military did when the war first started. They used, I called them charts, but they were just maps. They used those because they didn't have any charts.
You said they were from National Geographic?
Yes, they were National Geographic maps is just what they were. Well, we went down to the islands, the Solomon Islands, and every place where the big battles took place. And they sent Destroyer Division 3, which the Hollister was one of those. And we went all over the islands, and they had a little rocket on the port side of the ship, and they'd throw that overboard, the sonarman would, and they'd had 5 glass slides, and they'd tell water temperature, the color of the sand, the salt content, and I can't remember the other 2. I've never been able to remember that, but that was how they made themselves some charts.
Okay.
And the Navy was better prepared, I'm sure, after that, because that really left them in a sorry position.
Now, did the Hollister engage in any activity during Korea up and down the coast?
Oh,
or?
yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we sure did. Well, let me start with that. We were tied up to the Broadway island, Broadway pier there across from North Island. And the Hollister and the Frank Knox was behind us. And they loaded all kinds of stuff on our ship. I kept telling them I only got 3 weeks to do. And the gunnery officer said, "Don't worry about that. We're going to take care of that." Well, he already knew that I was going to get another year. Well, they loaded planes on the Philippine Sea, the carrier over at North Island. And we had a new captain on the ship, Captain Miller. He went in the Navy as a white hat in 1932. And boy, he was really sharp about handling a ship. The harbor master called him and said, "Do you need a tugboat to help you get out?" He said, "No, sir, I don't need a thing." And he took that ship right out, and off we went. And we were a week and a half going to Pearl Harbor, and when we got there, they had picked up those weekend warriors from California and flew them out there, but we already had the planes on the Philippine Sea. Well, the next day they sent us out on to practice, you know, launching and landing. And well, the first one they shot off that carrier, we were on plane guard right behind the Philippine Sea. He splashed right in the water. Well, I was up on the 01 deck, and I thought, my gosh, that guy's dead. But when the carrier ran right over him, and he come up in his yellow Mae West, and he was a big old tall fella from Sacramento, California. And he was sure glad to get back on that Hollister, let me tell you.
I bet.
Yeah, he was really tickled to death. Yeah.
You were telling a story about someone about loading a double load of powder in a gun.
Oh yes. We were in 1949. We were out 60 miles off of Pearl Harbor, Honolulu, Pearl Harbor. It's all the same place. And we had they had several young fellas that went in the Navy as they were just recruits that would serve 2 years and then 4 years in the reserve. Well, they never had been on a ship. They had those big guns like 5-inch 38s, so they let them get in a mount and load the guns and shoot it. I was in the Mark 56 director right above them. I was the one that was shooting that doggone thing. And well, I pulled the trigger and I heard a whoop like this, and I knew something went wrong because you could feel it, you know. And well, I jumped out of that director and I landed on both knees, which I had to get replaced eventually. Anyway, that's beside the point. But it killed 5 guys, and it was really a bad deal there, a bad situation. And
so it blew the breech of the gun apart?
Oh yes, it blew it, and the shell went halfway out the barrel, and that's how it armed itself. And so the boys that got burnt, they were in terrible shape, and one of the gunner's mate grabbed one, and when he did, the skin come off in his hands. And I'd never smelt human flesh burning before, but once you smell it, you'll never forget it. And I don't know, the Navy should have, I think, been responsible more for that accident, but you never know how things work out. So anyway, I got out of that director, and I went as far forward on that ship as I could, because it scared the fire out of me. And the boys, they were terrible. They blew their eyes out and their ears off, and all they had for a nose was just a little bone sticking out there. And I went over to see them at the IE Navy Hospital, and boy, they were in terrible shape. There was about 5 or 6 of them over there, and they would look like lobsters. They were all red and swole up, and they were in bad shape. And I see in the paper here lately where one of them passed away down in Louisiana. And he was my age or a little bit older, and he lived all his life blind and couldn't hear. And so you know what kind of a life he had.
Well, you did get to go to some ports of call while you were in the Southeast.
Well, we were in that, it used to be Formosa. That was, they were trying to keep the Chinese from invading Taiwan now. So we were on that Formosan patrol. And we got into one of those typhoons, and out there they're bad. And so we got to go into Shanghai, and you could hear the nationalists and the communists. They were fighting over in the hills there. You could hear them shooting, and we got to go ashore, but we couldn't go far because they're afraid that one of them would shoot us. So but we got to go a little ways in there, and we left there, and we got to go into Hong Kong Harbor, and boy, that's something to see, that place. It's a British Crown colony, and you'll see today where they're still having trouble. I was afraid of that on that video I showed you earlier, where I was worried about them, you know, their independence. But it was a beautiful place. We went in through that, and I never seen a Spitfire fighter like they had in World War II. And when we went down through those hills, 2 of them came and buzzed us, and they were really a beautiful airplane. Well, we stayed in Hong Kong for about 3 days, And everybody on the ship, of course, went ashore and we ate in all those big, beautiful hotels.
Mm-hmm.
And you could eat a 5-course meal for about $3. And boy, it was really something to see and a good place to eat, because that food on that Hollister wasn't much, but you'd eat it if you got hungry enough. Mm-hmm. And we stayed there for 3 days, and we went back out then, and that's when we went back to Yokosuka, Japan. And after that, we were heading back to the Hawaiian Islands when a fella on the ship got appendicitis. Mm-hmm. So we turned off of the other 3 ships, and we made a run then for Midway Island.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the big battle took place there at Midway.
World War II. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and they packed this boy in ice, and we pulled into the harbor there, and there's nothing to see there except just those old Goonie birds and an airstrip. Well, we dumped him off and refueled, and they flew a plane in to get him and took him back where they could operate on him. Mm-hmm. Well, and then we went back to Pearl Harbor, and that's where we picked up the boys I was telling you about.
Okay.
That caused that explosion on that ship. Mm-hmm. And it killed most of them, and killed Archie Beck. He was the mount captain on that little hood you see on that video. Mm-hmm. And he was really a nice man, Archie Beck. He was a Colorado Indian.
Okay. Well, what were the circumstances whenever you got out? When did you find out that you were going to be leaving the Navy, and what was it like making the trip home? And after you got home, how did you pick your life up again?
All right. Well, when we went back, that's another story. We went to San Diego, and we dumped half the crew off, mm-hmm. and they sent us to San Francisco to pick up some reserves. Mm-hmm. Well, we went and made a speed run then back to Pearl Harbor, and me all the time telling them I only got 3 weeks to do again. And they said, don't worry, we're going to take care of that. But they did. They put me on a MTS line ship. That's a Navy ship run by the Maritime Union. Mm-hmm. And they put me on that ship out of Pearl Harbor, and then I got discharged at Treasure Island, San Francisco.
Okay.
And that was in 1951.
Okay.
And I got out of there, and I was 3 days too late to go to school for the IBEW, mm-hmm. International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. So I got a job on a drilling rig, and boy, that ain't no way to make a living. I worked on a well called Hattie Russell #1. Up in the hills, you could look down and see Santa Barbara and Ventura, California. Okay. And I did that for a year. And I lived in an old bunkhouse kind of a deal, and where they fed you supper, and they'd make you a lunch, mm-hmm. which wasn't much of a lunch. But I stayed there for a year. Then I started to school. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where'd you start school at?
Bakersfield, California.
Okay.
Yeah, I went 4 years. They give you 6 weeks off in the summer, and every summer I'd sure be glad to get some rest, I'll tell you. Because, but I went to there 4 years, and that's when I met Linda and my wife, and she. Well, I might as well tell you, I was married before, but it didn't work out, mm-hmm. and. But when I found Linda, I knew I'd hit a jackpot there, because she's a sweet gal, and she takes care of me, and she raised my 3 kids.
Well, how did you get from Bakersfield, California to McMinnville, Tennessee?
Well, that's a long story. We had some friends that went to Church of Christ at Taft, California, and they lived at a little town in Morrison, mm-hmm. Tennessee. And he was a barber, and he said, if you ever come back that way, stop and see us. So we was on our way to the World's Fair in New York City. And so we stopped and saw them at Morrison. And boy, that was a beautiful place to us after being raised on that old desert. So we went on we stayed there about a week, 10 days, and we went on to the World's Fair and come back. And we went through Iowa and picked up a friend. That's another story. We had a boy on our ship. He was from Walnut, Iowa.
Walnut, Iowa.
Walnut, Iowa. And his mama, he was the only child, and they were millionaire farmers. And she wrote that boy a letter every day. And she sent him the weekly paper. And he was a killer, that kid. He was a really nice, tall kid. And he called the paper the Walnut Weekly Wipe, and I'll never forget that. He'd tickle everybody to death. And he let us all read them letters. Oh, his mama sure loved that boy. And you can't blame her. He was a real nice kid. And I just wondered if he's still alive today, because he was the same age as I am. And when you're 85, there's a lot of people not living. Well, anyway, we decided we'd just pick up our stuff. We had a baby girl, Karen. She lives in Saudi Daisy, Tennessee.
How long have you lived in McMinnville now? How many years?
Since 1969.
Okay, so not that long.
And that's the first time that I met this electrical inspector. We pulled in there, we had a camper, and we pulled it into Pennington's old trailer park. And I was just sitting outside fooling around, and a fella come in with a big mobile home, and he wanted directions, and he asked me, he says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm just enjoying life." I said, "They worked me so hard out there, I didn't hardly have a day off." He said, "Well, what do you do for a living?" And I told him. He said, "Oh my goodness." He said, "Let me go call my brother." Well, he called his brother, and his name was Glenn something. I can't remember his name, but he came and he was there in about an hour, and he hired me.
Okay.
And I wasn't even looking for a job. I wanted to just lay around a while. So they sent me to Humboldt, Tennessee. That's where I did the National Cash Register plant out there. And I stayed there. I told him I'd have to finish it where I could turn the job over to somebody else. I didn't want to leave him, man, because he'd been real good to me. And we put all our equipment at night in Junebug Union Service Station. Because, boy, I tell you, they'd steal everything. If you had anything loose, somebody'd get it. Well, I went in one night, and this fellow that run the station says, "You got a call from McMinnville." Said, "They want you to call collect right away." So I went in and called. And the man that called me was Bill Britton, and he worked for J.D. Mulligan. And he said, "I want you to come in this weekend." He said, "I don't like you working that far away from home." I said, "Hey, I ain't got a home. You know, this is where I live, is my home." Well, I came in, Linda and Karen and I, the other two girls had already run off and got married. And he says, "You shouldn't be working out that far away from home." So I come in, he hired me, and they sent me to Chester, South Carolina. Yeah, a long ways from home. Well, we did that job, and Lewis Brown was the superintendent. And Grady Mulligan, we had a engineer on the job named Tom Dearden, dear old Dearden we called him, and he was a drunk and a bum, but he was a smart man too. But he finally got him sober, and all I had to do to finish the job was find out where he wanted the outside lights located. So we finally got that done, and we came back home, and we bought us a trailer and moved into that trailer park, Pennington's.
This is 1969?
No, this is 1970.
Okay.
Yeah. And after that, we had a friend that passed away from Earlyville Church of Christ, and so she wanted us to move out in their place. And his name was Oscar Womack, and he's one of the original founders of the Earlyville Church. And we moved out there and stayed till we bought our place we live in now in about 1972, somewhere along there. And after that, J.D. Mulligan, he said, I don't want you just to be a electrical superintendent. He said, I want you to start building these plants. So he sent me to Hoisington, Kansas. And we about froze to death out there. We was out there for 32 months. And I hunted pheasant every day I was there. And I went back 13 years after that, every year hunting pheasant. And I made friends with Don Mai and Dwayne and really had a good time out there.
Well, Mr. Gilmore, I want to say thank you for coming and sharing your story with us. Thank you for your service to this country. And we really appreciate you being here. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for watching. This is Fireside Chats with Veterans. My name is Don Randolph. I want to say thank you to Ben Lohman for putting this program together. I want to say thank you to the Rotary Club of Sparta and the Rotary Clubs of McMinnville. And thank you very much.